days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord. Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Door of my heart, open wide, I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide, I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Night and day, I look for thee night and day.
I'd like to welcome you all to Sunday service here at Ananda Village in California. My name is Parvati, and this is my husband Pranaba, and we're very happy to have you here today. We especially extend a warm welcome to all of our guests and visitors and those who are here for the first time. I'd like to read now from Rays of the One Light, written by Swami Kriyananda and based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. The topic this week, Living in the Presence of God. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 25, we read of a king, capitalized, for the reference is to God, who welcomes certain devotees to the divine consciousness, saying, I was an hungered, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me in. Naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick, and ye visited me. I was in prison, and ye came unto me. The elect asked him when it was that they had served him in these ways. And the king answered, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. To see God as residing in every human being, as indeed he does, is to open oneself to limitless opportunities for serving him. Paramhansa Yogananda, in Autobiography of a Yogi, described a saint who lived in this consciousness as the greatest man of humility I ever knew. He described a seemingly chance encounter with this saint. Another day found me walking alone near the Howrah railway station. I stood for a moment by a temple, silently criticizing a small group of men with drum and cymbals who were violently reciting a chant. How undevotionally they used the Lord's divine name in mechanical repetition, I reflected. My gaze was astonished by the rapid approach of Master Mahashai. Sir, how come you here? The saint, ignoring my question, answered my thought. Isn't it true, little sir, that the beloved's name sounds sweet from all lips, ignorant and wise? He passed his arm around me affectionately. I found myself carried on his magic carpet to the merciful presence. If you would see God, watch for him everywhere. If you would hear his voice, listen for it in all sounds and also in their supporting silences. If you would know God, seek his wisdom behind merely human knowledge. The Bhagavad Gita in the 6th chapter states, "One who beholds my presence everywhere, and all things dwelling equally in me, he never loses loving sight of me, nor I of him through all eternity." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
I'd like to read to you from Paramahansa Yogananda's book of Sacred Prayer Demands, Whispers from Eternity. O Father, may I behold Thee above, beneath, behind, around, wherever I turn my gaze. Train the children of my senses never to stray from Thee, who dwellest at the heart of everything. Turn my eyes inward to Thy changeless beauty. Attune my ears to silence, that I may hear Thy subtlest music. Breathe on me the heavenly scent of Thy sacred presence. Orient-wise, I will worship Thee, placing the candles of my 5 senses on the altar of my love. Thus I will contact Thee in the first pale shafts of dawn, absorb Thee in the bright light of noon, expand in Thee with the hidden glow of twilight, and merge in Thee in the silver moonlight. Always will I keep alight on my inner altar the mystic taper of my love for Thee. One way of looking at the journey that we're on, that of being incarnated, of being alive, is to simplify it by saying that really what we're here to do is simply remember who and what we really are. Or as Yogananda phrased it, to improve our knowing of who and what we really are. And who are we? We're really that spark of the infinite, that supreme effulgence, that divine light, that divine consciousness. And what are we? We're really here to become instruments for that presence of God into the world around us. Now I remember one time, not that long ago, I was mentioning to someone in one of our meditation groups that really why we're all here is simply to find God and to help people find God. And I said that a number of times in the context of the conversation. And this person said, I've never thought of it that way. But, it's because we use the terminology perhaps of the word God, or we have an idea of what that is in a container. And of course, what I was saying is the highest fulfillment of who we are, from the spark becoming that supreme light, is really what I was saying. And so the terminology just got in the way. But over the years, Swami Kriyananda has said something that is very fascinating. He said that the path of meditation, the path of yoga, is really more a process of unlearning than learning. Now, it's a radical idea when you think of the investment of money we put in to learning, going to college and so forth, and almost as if that's a requirement for being successful in life. And of course, it isn't. It's just a component that we think is necessary. But I was reading something just the other day from a scientist that said almost identically that same phrase, that really that knowledge comes from more of unlearning than learning. What does that really mean? Well, luckily, science has done a lot to help us to clarify that. It's almost as if science at this point in Dwapara Yuga, this new age, is corroborating, is giving us support from a different perspective for us to help not only ourselves, but other people really grow in the experience. Because one of the things that happens almost from birth is that the portion of the brain that starts to dominate is the left brain. And I think we all know what the left brain does. It's more of a linear path of thinking. It's rational. One of the things the left brain does is give us context of our edges, of our boundaries. And so we start very much on that path of separation from everything right away in our lives. And actually the left brain is called the little dictator because it will dominate. It will dominate us as we go on through life. That's why you can see something like Education for Life, the way that Yogananda and Swami Kriyananda has developed for children, is so essential. Because if you don't catch it from the beginning of what's happening, then that dominant way of looking at life is going to be linear and rational only. And it will tend to confine what's going on. So the unlearning for us is really, from the scientific viewpoint, allowing the balance in our brains to happen, the two hemispheres. And one of the things that we see that is very successful in doing that is meditation. Literally, one of the scientists that studied a lot of meditation in many people has said basically meditation is the rewiring of the circuitry of the brain, which means it isn't just that we're doing it with a thought that it might change us, but we're setting in motion that change. And so what we're really doing is unlearning the things that keep us bound in a certain way, in a fixed way, and we're remembering who we really are. Who we really are is always there. It's that we've learned ways to repress that and to come at life from a very different perspective than our whole being. And so all the things that we do, everything that we do, you can look at it from basically reinforcing what's going to be your life. And so if you tend to be just very limited, contractive in the ego, then that's how you will actually live your life out. There's no question about it. Now, Yogananda said that the ego location in the body is at the medulla oblongata, which is inside the thick skull part here, the little dip that most of us have at the base of the brain. But you can sense that this is one way of looking at it. I'm not sure if it's really true, but I think it's a nice way to look at it, is that the left brain is how the ego and the medulla manifests itself in allowing delusion to be our reality. It's not that the left brain is bad, nor is the ego bad. And that's important to remember. The ego is actually a tool given to us to really inspire us to get on with it. The left brain, if we can balance it and treat it and approach it and feed it in the right way, it will work for us. But it takes a tremendous tending of the garden and weeding of the weeds to do so. It isn't going to come by saying, oh, it'll work out. Well, it'll work out, but not in a fulfilling way. And so what we have the possibility of is setting in motion every moment this living the presence of God. And we do it through the two ways that are really mentioned in these readings from the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. The Gita is saying, basically, go within. Find that direct presence of God. Offer yourself into that experience. And then the Bible is saying, not only do we have to do that inwardly, we have to feed every moment of our lives in our activities and in our relationship to other people with that same focus. So look at the things that we emphasize in our teachings. Prayer. What does prayer really do? Prayer, done in the way that Yogananda emphasized, allows us to start opening up to a greater source of inspiration, a greater source of connectedness in expansive consciousness. And you can see why he emphasized, don't plead with God, don't be a beggar with God. Why? Because that reinforces the separation. That reinforces that linear part of our mind, our consciousness, that keeps us bound and very limited and sees us separate from God. So Yogananda said in prayer, don't think of God as being the third person, that God, but as your nearest and dearest friend. Because what that starts to do more and more as we do that, we live it. We are in that prayer, not saying the prayer. We are imbued with the presence that we're praying with. That's God already. Then if you look at things like chanting, and it was interesting that, because I flubbed the chant, I've done that a number of times, but what happened there was interesting, is that I got lost in actually the feeling of the chant. And I looked down at the keys, and I couldn't remember what the heck that part did anymore. I mean, literally, I had no idea what was going on. And I thought, well, this is in your hands, God. And so I just relaxed, and I thought, it doesn't matter. I'm feeling what the chant is about. Hopefully others will feel that, even through my stumbling. And that's why at the end I just repeated the phrase that I couldn't figure out on the keyboard, and relaxed into it, thinking more that it was God through me rather than that I had to remember how to do it. I had no memory of how to do it, believe me, at that point. But it was there because that sense of being in that connection. Well, if you think of what chanting is about, it's really, on one hand, it's focusing and reinforcing that more expanded sense of awareness by directing the tendency of the thoughts to be diverse and scattered, or maybe not scattered, but deeply focused on some negative aspect of, maybe a fear or anger or resistance or something, and takes it out of that with the words and the music. It becomes an experience rather than just us thinking. So we take the thinking part and align it. It starts to be reinforced again into something deeper for us. And that's why, if you think of chanting, it's great to have group chanting, because the power that we all feel when we do this together is very moving, very inspiring. But ultimately, chanting is about each one of us chanting with God. And so I really encourage all of you, whether you live in the community or guests or seeing this on the web, that to really take the time, whether you're musical or not, isn't the point. The point is, it's your chance to be in a very direct way with that expanded consciousness, with devotion. And so just chant on your own. Take a chant and let that be a way to dive deeper and deeper. Don't worry about learning a lot of chants. That'll happen in time. I remember when I first came to Ananda in 1978, I was so touched by the chanting, but I wasn't that musical. And I went back and listened to a lot of tapes, but within about 6 months, I had a meditation group at that point, that every month we had a kirtan for an hour and a half without instruments. It was simply a cappella. Because I loved chanting so much, I figured that was enough of what needed to happen. And other people came in, and sometimes it was pretty bad. But other times it was deeply inspiring. And then I remember when I came in 1980 to take my yoga teacher training, someone lent me a harmonium. And for hours on the weekends and every day, I just chanted one chant over and over again, because I wanted to get past just the enjoyment of it into the experience of it. Because I knew Yogananda said that if you chant a chant over and over again with deepening awareness and devotion, you have that chant as your experience of the divine. It isn't just chanting to God, it's the experience of being with God that starts to be there in the transformation when you chant that way. And so take it to heart. Really take chanting on in an individual way as well as group chanting. Every day, find yourself immersed in a chant that draws you deeper into that experience, because it also shifts the way that our ego and mind work. It works incredibly well in that way. Same with visualization. I remember Swami Kriyananda said at one point that Yogananda said to use visualization every day. And often that slips by because we have a lot of things on our plate with our techniques. But just have something that, again, trains the mind to be in expanded mode. That visualization of the expanding sphere of light that's on the Metaphysical Meditations recording by Swami Kriyananda is a wonderful one. You can modify it, shorten it, condense it. But the idea of always tuning into that expanding light creates the presence of God. Very, very real for us. And then you look at a lot of the other things that we have, even before meditation, affirmations. What we're doing, again, is simply putting in place the program that allows us to be expansive. Because if we're not doing it constantly, meaning, I don't mean every moment, although that's the ideal, but if we're not doing it every day, the tendency of the left brain, the little dictator, will dominate. And it will come and force us into past default positions. I've been reading this interesting book that I would encourage you all to read. It's by a woman named Jill Bolte Taylor, and the book is called A Stroke of Insight. And it's about this woman who was 37 years old in 1996, and she had a stroke. A type of stroke that's not usual. It was a hemorrhaging type of stroke, which is less than 20% of the population when they get strokes have that type. But basically it bled into her left hemisphere. And blood is a poison. It actually starts to destroy and kill the brain cells when it seeps in like that. And it took her 4 hours after recognizing something was wrong to actually be able to phone. Now, she was very functional, but it took her 4 hours to let her left brain actually still be a part of her awareness, because she was in such a state of euphoria because her right brain was dominating. And so she felt inner peace. She felt expansive qualities. And yet, luckily, that little nagging left brain also was saying, this isn't right. There's something needing to happen here. And she talks about taking a long time. She remembered she should phone somebody. Now, this woman is a brain scientist. Actually, more specifically, she was a neuroanatomist, one that researches the mapping of the brain to see. So it was a very interesting thing. So she was like looking as an outside observer of this experience taking place. But just to even figure out how to use a push, a dial pad phone. She said if it was a rotary phone, there's no way she could have figured it out. But it took her a while, because these things, these numbers, were no longer numbers. They were just characters that had no meaning to her. And so she had to do this long process of getting through it. But what she experienced was being alive in what was happening from the right brain. Now, it took her 8 years to recover fully. And one of the ways she recovered was watching a video of a presentation, a lecture she gave a few months before the stroke. Because there was no way she could speak, walk, do anything that was her in that previous incarnation a few months before. It was like it had been wiped out. But the intriguing part about it was that she came to understand the left brain as being this controlling default position. For instance, it tells story. It's a storyteller that, unlike Tim Kretzman, who has wonderful stories for us, it sort of engages you in the chatter. Pretty familiar, right? The chatter that keeps us sort of engaged and thinking this way and doing that and responding with reactions and emotions and all that. And she said she learned how to quell the disturbances that were happening in that storytelling mode. She still appreciated, remember, that the left brain had a tremendously important function to have happen. But one of the things she explains, which is critical to this living in the presence of God, is that she said that the biochemical situation that happens when we have an emotion like anger, that by the time, from the beginning of when the brain has that surge in a biochemical way, that it goes through the body, it is less than 90 seconds before it's flushed out completely. That's it. There's no more anger. But what we do is we hold on to it. And every time we hold on to it, it feeds it, so the next time something happens that we react to, it's going to be more enforced in that way. Fascinating, isn't it? That's why Yogananda said, snip something in the bud. Learn when there's an emotional sensation. And in this case, what the scientist is saying, learn at least to look at your watch and wait for 90 seconds to be over and realize, I don't have to buy into this anymore. I don't have to be caught by the ego moving through that part of me that's taking me away from that presence of God. Isn't that amazing? So 90 seconds. That's all you're allowed. But that's freeing to actually appraise something like that, because we then have a choice. what Yogananda's teachings in the path of yoga is all about is being able to be in the position where we choose rather than being compelled. When we default to these positions of the ego and its instruments, we're compelled. The thing that also starts to happen when you stop that chatter and you stop processing past the point of those 90 seconds is that your ability to have compassion and relate to other people's realities as they are is expanded tremendously. And so we're then allowed to see that we can actually reach out and really touch other people from who we are. How we do that, I think the confusion about the reading from the Bible for a lot of people is that I better go out and serve the poorest of the poor or the hungry, the thirsty, and the homeless. But really what it's saying is that each one of us has to come to the point when we're living more in the presence of God that we act accordingly to what draws us and inspires us to be a channel. So whether that's acting in those specific ways that the Bible verses are saying, or in other ways, that's really your karma coming into focus so that you're going to release that karma, those tendencies, to open up and expand. But each one of us, if we're centered enough, will be able to figure out what it is. And sometimes even if we don't figure it out, we can move in a direction. The whole idea of living in community, if you look at it now from this perspective of how we function, it reinforces that positive, expansive reality of not only doing it for ourselves, but sharing with other people. Years ago, someone that I've known for a long time that isn't on the spiritual path said to me, or not consciously on the spiritual path, said to me, but you're just in your own world. And you're with people that are like-minded, that are seeking God, but that's not what the world's about. And I said to him, well, but everyone's in their own world. I mean, you have to be in your own world. I mean, you function by the challenges and the tendencies and, again, the default positions that you've set in motion. I think it was Joe Tish was saying a few weeks ago at Sunday service that, or it may have been some other minister, that even choosing of the clothes you wear in the morning is pretty much predetermined by your tendencies and habits. And you may have a slight variation within that, but pretty much you're going to be following something that's already in motion. And so what we can do, literally, not only figuratively, is really choose every moment of what's happening. But then we also want to have the backup that what we've set in motion as our more default position is expansive, so that it will help us to go past that. So with chanting, for instance, it isn't just that we hear it and we sing it with our voice, we feel it. It's an experience for us. And in the techniques of meditation, all the ones that we've been given on this particular path, they allow us to sense the experience. In a sense, with chanting, for instance, it's similar with meditation. It's said that when you're using techniques, if you suddenly feel an expanded sense of consciousness, it may be okay to let go of the technique because you're in the experience that the techniques are leading to. Now, if you're lazy, that won't work out because you want to continue to magnetize what you're doing with the techniques. But always be aware that maybe God's grace is flowing with you, into you, and the point is to be in that experience. And so with chanting, the point isn't to chant. The point is to be in the experience of God, and chanting will lead us to that. And so the techniques simply reinforce the shift from the little self into that expanded self, where the more that you meditate, meaning that, as Yogananda said, the more you meditate, the more you want to meditate. The less you meditate, heck, the less you want to meditate. It's just that way. It's just the way that we're designed, and we have that free choice. That's ultimately really the only choice. Are we going towards expansion and living in the presence of God, or are we defaulting back into our egos and that reaction, that contraction away from God? That's the choice. If every activity, every thought, every emotion, every feeling, every person, every circumstance, it simply really is just that. Are we moving expansively, or are we moving in a contractive way? And so what we want to do is reprogram ourselves so that living in the presence of God is a natural tendency rather than something that's always far away or outside of ourselves. So take the time, really, in the little things in your life to prompt that. That's why we encourage, having a japa, a repetition in a way of either the name of God or a quality, so that you're always in that loop, rather than the loop of what's going wrong loop, or the reactive mode loop. Because if you do that consistently, then you're in that flow. And it will carry you a long way. We still need to be conscious and then super conscious as we have that backup. But we're more inclined to be super conscious. This woman scientist, this brain scientist, after she'd recovered, she used music a lot. And that's why we have music a lot in our experience at Ananda. Because again, it enlivens the experience. It isn't just hearing it, we become it more. But she was listening to some CD in her car, driving down the highway, and suddenly the highway patrol were, taking off over to the side of the road and gave her a ticket. Because she'd so much been in the experience of just the music, she forgot her reality. Well, again, which isn't a great thing. But she said in the next few hours, probably over 100 times, she had to stop the tendency of reaction and let her expansive side come forward. But at least 100 times she'd say, no, I'm not going there. Stop it. In her case, she was referring to the left brain, the tendency to corral the whole life experience into a very contractive reactive process of fear, blame, the whole gamut of reactions. But it took her 100 times, she said, to remember her true reality. And she said she could, after the stroke, and what she does now in her life, she says, I can feel when I'm not living expansively, and it's horrible. Well, we all know that, but guess what? We've overridden it a lot of times. And what we're needing to do is simply remember Smriti, as Patanjali says in Yoga Sutras, of what our true experience really is, and reinforce that. I mean, even Yogananda said that, when you're depressed and you can't get your way out of it, or you're feeling in a mood, go to a mirror and push the corners of your mouth out. Well, if nothing else, you'll look ridiculous to yourself, and you'll probably laugh a little bit. But even encouraging the body just to lift up. That's why we talk about a straight spine. Because if you're sagging, if you're just sort of collapsed down, it's harder to really reinforce that expansive nature of who you are. But when you stand and sit and even lie down in that sense of openness of the body and expansion, then you're reinforcing the power to live in that presence of the divine. Now that's pretty magical, but it's straightforward. It's very simple too. The tendency, though, to think, oh, it's so hard. This woman, Jill Bolte Taylor, saying when she teaches classes at the college she teaches at, a lot of the students, and these are grad students, just think it's just too much work to feel what the experience is and make a choice. Well, what are they living? I mean, what life is it then, if that isn't what we're doing? But you can see the power of the default position that pulls us back into a littleness. And so the engagement demands all of who we are. Remember that formula that Yogananda gave us of the 100% of our fulfillment, that 25% is our effort. But it's 100%. It isn't sort of, well, yeah, I might meditate today because I feel like it. It's, I'm going to meditate today. I'm going to think good thoughts. I'm going to affirm this. I'm going to sit with my spine straight. I'm going to relax in an upward way rather than in a collapsing way. I'm going to think of someone when they hurt me that I need to help them. Maybe just a prayer, because they're the ones that are acting in a bad way. But rather than thinking, oh, poor me, we need to feel that we're able to expand and offer someone the gift of support, even if they don't know about it. Just like this thing of the Jesus saying that you fed those that were, you fed me when I was hungered. You gave me water when I was thirsty. Well, these people he's talking to had done it through others. They weren't conscious even necessarily of Jesus' presence. But if we add that element of knowing we're going in this way, we actually build that momentum much more. It's much more productive. So let the very first thought in the morning be not to God, but with God. And then throughout the day, whatever it is that you're involved in, with people, circumstances, let there be that resonance that God is flowing through each one of us. And God is in that other person, in that circumstance, in that situation. And then in meditation, to dive deep into the well of that magnetism that will go forward into those daily activities. But our quest for God is really one that allows us to be expanded in every moment. And I was thinking this morning that one of the most frequent prayers that we use of Yogananda's really captures this. So just close your eyes and we'll end with this. And just feel the prayer. Don't repeat it even mentally. Feel the prayer as the openness of your heart and be in the experience of God's presence. May thy love shine forever on the sanctuary of our devotion, and may I be able to awaken thy love in all hearts. Om.
From the depths of slumber as I ascend the spiral stairway of wakefulness, I will whisper, God, God, God. Thou art the food, and when I break my fast of nightly separation from thee, I will taste thee and mentally say, God, God, God. No matter where I go, the spotlight of my mind will ever keep turning on thee. And in the battle din of activity, my silent war cry will be God, God, God. When boisterous storms of trial shriek, and when worries howl at me, I will drown their noises, loudly chanting, God, God, God. When my mind weaves dreams with threads of memories, on that magic cloth will I emboss God, God, God. Every night in time of deepest sleep, when my peace dreams and calls joy, joy, my joy comes singing evermore. God, God, God. In waking waiting, working, dreaming, sleeping, serving, meditating, chanting, divinely loving, my soul will constantly hum, unheard by any.